Have you crossed the age of 50, and suddenly it feels like your body changed the rules of the game without telling you? Even eating exactly the same way you always have, and keeping the same routine, your triglycerides have skyrocketed on your recent lab tests, and that stubborn belly fat appeared out of nowhere? If this is happening to you, listen carefully. This is not a lack of willpower, nor is it just getting older. What you're facing is a silent hormonal decline that profoundly changes how your liver processes fat. There's a true switch in your endocrine system that, after your fifth decade of life, tend to turn off your natural ability to clear fat from your blood and turns on forced storage mode instead. If you don't learn how to deal with this specific hormonal factor, no restrictive diet of lettuce and grilled chicken will permanently clean up your blood. Today, I'm going to open the black box of your physiology after 50 and show you how to rebalance your internal chemistry so your triglycerides can return to youthful levels. Hello, I'm Dr. Harrison Blake. I'm a specialist physician with 15 years of clinical experience focused on longevity and metabolic health. My mission is to help you move through midlife with the vigor and health of someone in their 30s. If you want to understand how your hormones control your blood test results, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Comment below. Do you feel like your metabolism stalled or drastically changed after 50? I read and respond to every comment. Many people believe that estrogen in women and testosterone in men serve only reproductive function or libido. That's one of the biggest misconceptions in popular medicine. In reality, these sex hormones function as true metabolic shields that protect your liver and blood vessels throughout your youth. When you reach menopause or andropause, what happens is not just the end of a reproductive cycle, but the sudden withdrawal of chemical protection that kept your triglycerides under control. In women, estrogen plays a fundamental role in regulating the enzyme that clears fat from the bloodstream. It stimulates the expression of LDL receptors and improves the removal of VLDL particles, the carriers of triglycerides. When estrogen drops sharply after 50, the liver loses a signal to clean house. It's as if the refinery manager leaves and the machines start operating chaotically, allowing fat to accumulate in the blood. That's why it's so common for women who always had perfect labs to see their triglycerides double within 1 or 2 years after menopause begins. In men, the decline of free testosterone produces a similar effect, but with an added complication. Testosterone is the primary hormone that maintains active muscle mass. When testosterone levels fall during andropause, the body loses its ability to efficiently burn visceral fat. The fat that used to be burned by muscles for energy is now stored in the liver and sent back into the bloodstream as triglycerides. In addition, low testosterone increases the activity of enzymes that favor fat accumulation in the abdominal region, creating that vicious cycle of a growing belly and thicker blood. Understanding this shift in biological terrain is liberating. You stop blaming yourself for a diet that seems ineffective and begin to understand that your body now requires different support. At 50, your metabolism isn't broken. It's unprotected. Without that hormonal shield, any excess carbohydrate or stress has 10 times the impact it did at 30. But the drop in sex hormones doesn't come alone. It brings with the rise of another hormone that is a true manufacturer of liquid fat in your system. After 50, your body loses part of its resilience in handling stress. In this context, cortisol, known as the stress hormone, takes on the role of metabolic villain. In youth, cortisol would rise to help you deal with an emergency and quickly return to normal. But in midlife, due to the decline of the protective hormones we discussed, cortisol tends to remain chronically elevated. And what few doctors explain is that high cortisol directly signals your liver to manufacture triglycerides, even if you're not eating sugar. Here's how the process works. Cortisol is a catabolic hormone. When elevated, it signals that you're in danger to ensure you have energy to fight or flee. It breaks down proteins from your muscles and converts them into glucose in the liver through a process called gluconeogenesis. The problem is that you're probably not running from a lion. You're just stressed from work or sleep deprivation. That extra internally produced glucose isn't used. So what does the liver do with the excess sugar? It quickly converts it into triglycerides and releases them into your bloodstream. That's why many patients tell me, "Doctor, I cut out sweets and bread, but my triglycerides won't go down." The answer lies in your stress levels and sleep quality. Poor sleep after 50 is a devastating trigger. Sleep deprivation prevents the natural nighttime drop in cortisol and disrupts ghrelin and leptin, the hunger and satiety hormones. The result is a body that spends the entire night manufacturing fat and the entire day craving quick energy. Furthermore, high cortisol promotes the accumulation of visceral fat, the kind stored between your organs. This fat is not inert storage. It is metabolically active and inflammatory. It releases cytokines that further impair liver function, creating a cycle where stress generates fat, and fat generates more inflammation and chemical stress. To lower triglycerides after 50, you cannot ignore cortisol control. If your nervous system is in a constant state of alert, your liver will continue operating as a full-speed triglyceride factory, regardless of what's on your plate. One of the most overlooked factors in analyzing high triglycerides after 50 isn't in your blood. It's in your muscles. There's a natural aging phenomenon called sarcopenia, the progressive loss of muscle mass and strength. This may seem like an aesthetic or strength issue, but metabolically, your muscles are the primary drain for fat and sugar in your body. When you lose muscle, you lose the power plants that should be consuming the triglycerides circulating in your blood. Imagine your circulatory system as a highway and triglycerides as fuel trucks. Your muscles are the factories that receive that fuel to operate. After 50, if you don't actively maintain muscle, those factories begin to close or shrink. The result is obvious. The trucks keep arriving but have nowhere to unload. They sit on the highway, clogging the system and increasing the risk of vascular accidents. Science shows that muscle tissue is the largest site of fat clearance after meals. Inside muscle fibers are mitochondria, the furnaces where fat is actually burned. With sarcopenia, you have fewer mitochondria available. In addition, muscle loss drastically reduces the number of insulin receptors in the body. This creates a state of muscular insulin resistance. Your pancreas produces insulin, but the smaller, less active muscle simply doesn't answer the call. When muscle ignores insulin, the body understands that excess energy in the blood must go somewhere else. If muscle refuses it, the liver is forced to collect that energy and convert it into more stored triglycerides. It's a cruel cycle. The less muscle you have, the more fat your liver manufactures to compensate for the lack of peripheral consumption. That's why treating high triglycerides after 50 is not just about removing fat from your diet. It's about reopening the factories through muscle stimulation. Many patients believe light walking is enough. But to combat sarcopenia and reactivate triglyceride burning, the body needs resistance training, good old-fashioned weightlifting or strength exercises. Without signaling your DNA that muscle is necessary, the body will continue eliminating muscle tissue and accumulating liquid fat in the bloodstream. You need muscle mass to keep triglycerides low, because muscle is the only place where that fat ultimately meets its end. If your body were a city, your liver will be the central refinery and logistics center. It decides whether the energy you eat should be burned now or stored for later. The problem is that at 50, this refinery begins operating under new biological management, often less efficient. With hormonal decline and increased oxidative stress that accompany aging, the liver's ability to export fat in an organized manner drastically decreases. In youth, the liver is agile. It receives fats and sugars, processes what's needed, and sends excess of subcutaneous fat, the fat just under the skin. But after 50, there's a dangerous shift in storage signaling. The body loses its ease in storing fat on the periphery and begins prioritizing central storage. This is what we call redirection toward visceral fat. This visceral fat, lodged between your intestinal loops and even within the liver itself, functions like an inflamed gland. When the liver starts accumulating fat internally, known as fatty liver, it enters a state of logistical dysfunction. It becomes resistant to the very insulin that should regulate fat production. The result? The liver loses its brake and begins manufacturing and releasing VLDL particles loaded with triglycerides into the blood nonstop, even while you're fasting. That's why at this stage of life, your triglycerides may appear high first thing in the morning. It's not the fat you ate at dinner. It's your liver that spent the entire night leaking fat into your bloodstream because it can no longer process it internally. Additionally, aging naturally reduces bile production, which is essential for eliminating excess cholesterol and lipids. The system becomes overloaded. Too much raw material comes in, but the drainage is clogged. This situation worsens with even moderate alcohol or fructose consumption, both processed exclusively by the liver. At 50, your hepatic margin of error is much smaller. What your liver once handled easily now creates inflammatory overload that keeps triglycerides chronically elevated. Understanding that your liver has changed how it works is the first step towards stopping the overload and giving it the right signals to become a center of burning again, not just storage and leakage. The real turning point after 50 isn't eat less and exercise more, but sending chemical signals to your DNA that mimic a youthful environment. To lower triglycerides at this stage, we need strategies that restore insulin sensitivity and force the liver to stop manufacturing fat. The first indispensable tool is smart strength training. Forget hours of monotonous walking. To fight sarcopenia and reactivate mitochondria, you need intense muscle contraction. When you lift weights or perform resistance exercises, you signal to your body that muscle is required. This signaling increases the natural production of anabolic hormones and, more importantly, cleans insulin receptors. It's as if you're replacing old locks on your cells so insulin can function again, pulling fat from the blood to fuel muscle. The second strategy is what I call a strategic eating window. Intermittent fasting, when done properly, is one of the greatest allies after 50. Why? Because it gives the liver time to empty visceral fat stores. During fasting, insulin levels drop to their lowest point, allowing lipoprotein lipase to finally fish circulating triglycerides out of the blood. For those in midlife, fasting helps reduce systemic inflammation and regulate cortisol, combating the fat leakage we discussed earlier. However, the biggest mistake I see is fear of healthy fats. At 50, your body needs raw material to produce what remains of your hormones. Cholesterol is the precursor to testosterone and estrogen. If you cut out all fats, you remove the fundamental building block of hormonal construction. The correct strategy is to focus on modulating fats, such as those found in avocados, olive oil, and nuts. These fats support hormone production and, paradoxically, signal to the liver that it doesn't need to manufacture as much fat internally. When you consume high-quality fats, your liver understands supply is stable and turns off the emergency lipogenesis mode. Additionally, introducing high biological value protein at every meal is non-negotiable. After 50, anabolic resistance requires you to consume more protein to maintain the same muscle mass as a 20-year-old. Without protein, you lose muscle. Without muscle, your triglycerides have nowhere to go. It's chemical logistics. Protein to build the drained muscle, good fat to stabilize hormones, the factory, and fasting to allow cleaning maintenance. Combining strength training with a diet rich in monounsaturated fats and protein is the most effective way to recalibrate your metabolic thermostat. You're not just trying to lower a lab number. You're telling your body that you are still an active, productive individual who needs a powerful engine. This shift in signaling is what separates those who age with health from those who become dependent on cholesterol and triglyceride medications. Often, patients exercise and adjust their diet, but triglycerides don't budge because the gears lack lubrication. In midlife, nutrient absorption decreases, while cellular demand increases. The first pillar is vitamin D. More than a vitamin, it's a prohormone that regulates insulin sensitivity and liver function. Without optimal vitamin D levels, your body remains in an inflammatory state, making fat burning more difficult. Next, we have magnesium and zinc. Magnesium is essential for glucose to enter cells instead of being turned into fat in the liver, while zinc is fundamental for maintaining testosterone and overall hormonal health in both men and women. Finally, omega-3 acts as a biological detergent, reducing VLDL production in the liver and combating visceral fat inflammation. After 50, these micronutrients aren't optional. They are catalysts that allow all the lifestyle changes we discussed to truly translate into clean blood and protected arteries. Understand that your body at 50 is not failing. It's simply operating under a new set of biological rules. The rise in your triglycerides is a sign that your hormonal and muscular terrain needs recalibration. By reclaiming control of your muscle mass, managing cortisol, and providing the nutrients your liver now demands, you're not just lowering a number on a blood test. You're reigniting your metabolic youth. Don't accept the idea that decline is inevitable. With the right strategy, your blood can be as clean and fluid as a young person's, ensuring your heart has decades of vigor ahead. I'm Dr. Harrison Blake, and my mission is to make sure you have the knowledge to become the master of your own health. If this video opened your eyes to the hormonal factor, share it with someone else over 50 who needs this clarity. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Take good care of your engine. The journey is still long ahead. I'll see you at our next meeting.